Everyone, and welcome to this LEPSL Facebook Live. Today we are diving into our LEPSL 520 discussion board and VP interview. Thank you all so much for joining us today, whether you are here watching us live or watching the replay. And with that, I'll kick things over to our academic director, Dr. Erik Fritsvold.
Sarah, thanks so much for the kind introduction here. And folks out there in the LE community, thanks for carving time out of your day to come and join us and meet and converse with one of those students who, quite frankly, just makes our program go. So a little bit of context here. The person you're about to meet is one of several who raises the level of discourse and brings extra vigor into the classroom. But this is important for several reasons. We've been really humbled by how this program's been received in the LA community. After launching in 2015, again, we've been humbled by the number of students that we've been able to work with. And we attribute that in part to our curriculum, that we work really hard to keep cutting edge and useful and applicable. We attribute that in part to our faculty team that I'd respectfully suggest is an unrivaled group of law enforcement leaders and academic practitioners. But really, it's students like the gentleman you're going to meet here momentarily that are the heartbeat of our program, that bring their lived experience into our online classroom and really lean into the tough conversations and the issues of the day. So this isn't just celebrating a student for great work. It's really celebrating what really is the core of our program. So with that as the context, please join me in welcoming our discussion board MVP winner from our LEPSL 520 Best Practices in Community Engagement course from this past fall 2022 from the Buena Park Police Department, Captain Nghia Nguyen. Captain, huge congratulations and thanks for carving out time to join us here.
Dr. Fritsvold, thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored to be here and Happy New Year to you and your staff.
Oh, thank you, sir. Well, I'm just going to dive right into some substance here. I would respectfully suggest that police community relations might be the defining issue of at least the last 5 years, if not beyond. And clearly that was the main focus of this community engagement course, especially in your role and in your location in Buena Park. Were there any substantive elements from this course that really resonated with you, sir?
Yeah, when we hire our officers, we talk to them about, why they want to be a police officer in our city. And, we try to hire from within our community, and they know that, community engagement, going out, meeting the community members on non-enforcement situations is a way to, promote our organization, promote community policing as a whole. And also, one of the things I learned obviously in the course is, when we're doing that, to be authentic about why you're out there, not just doing it because the boss says so, or my sergeant asked me to do this. It's actually going out there on your own, understanding why we do these things and going out and promoting the department. And so for us as leaders, we have to continually push the why to our employees and making sure that they understand, the goals that we're trying to promote.
Wonderful. By coincidence, in 2 hours before we're chatting right here, we were just discussing the Harvard Business Review article, The Importance of Communicating the Why from a management and leadership perspective for just the reasons that you are articulating. Kind of diving deeper into that authentic community engagement piece that you were describing, Captain. I see that your agency has a Chiefs Advisory Board. I know that was a topic of conversation in the community engagement course. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about how your agency leverages that for maximum value?
Yeah, our agency, just like many in and around the country, has a chief advisory board or something similar. And when we first started it in 2015, our officers were up in arms about having a chief's advisory board. They thought it was some type of oversight board. And it's not. It's just another avenue, another voice for the chief to hear from the community, and for us to be able to show off our work. And so with the Chiefs Advisory Board they have currently, we have about 10 members of the community that come in. They come in once a month. They look at some of our policies. We talk about some of the things that we are talking about instituting within the department or within the city, getting their feedback, and then taking that information and having a discussion amongst the executive board. we do the same thing with our officers. We have committees that we discuss, things, initiatives that we want to do. And then, they provide feedback. At the end of the day, do we do everything they ask? Likely not, but at least we're listening and we understand their perspective and we use it in our decision-making efforts.
I appreciate that explanation. I remember in the community engagement course, there were some folks who expressed those concerns about exactly, was it an oversight body? Were there ultimate recommendations? Were those mandatory? So I really appreciate that nuanced explanation. Kind of drilling down even more in this course, Captain, let's talk a little bit about vigor. In doing my preparation for this interview, I was looking back in your work in this course with Professor Valdivinos, if I'm not mistaken, and it wasn't uncommon for you to exceed what the discussion board asked and required of you as a student by 300 or 400%. You were regularly tripling or quadrupling, and at one point quintupling, if my math is correct, the number of posts required in that week. So can you talk to our audience a little bit about why you were so engaged? Clearly, you had earned the grade several days ago, but continued to interact with your colleagues. Can you talk us through that process a little bit, please?
Sure. I mean, first and foremost, I'm paying for this education, right? And, some of us are paying out of pocket, some have incentives through work, but at the end of the day, we're putting in the work to obtain a grade and to learn the information and to use it in our profession. And so, the discussion board posts are crucial to learning, our craft, right? We talk about it all the time, is that, somebody poses a question and either you can sit there and be a voyeur and just watch and look at all the answers coming in, or you actively participate. You give your opinion, somebody else gives their opinion, and you can respectfully disagree. But at the end of the day, you're listening and you're watching and seeing what's occurring. So, being active in the group definitely helps with the course. You're continually engaging. And then for me, at least, also, at the time, I was a lieutenant, and I was trying to promote to the rank of captain, and having these discussions and always staying engaged in the profession, helped me attain the goal that I desired.
And huge congratulations on attaining that goal. As a follow-up here, Cap, we were discussing right before we went live here a little bit about the candor on the discussion boards that at least I've been told by several LEPSL folks over the years that sometimes if you're seeking input from folks in your same agency, that sometimes it's the same people, or maybe because there's a hierarchy, or that folks aren't maybe as candid as they could be in other environments. How is the LEPSL discussion board avoiding that, or how does it facilitate a bit more candor than maybe you would get on a day-to-day basis?
As we go through the class, usually the first discussion board post is a introduction about yourself, and that's the first time you maybe hear or see any type of rank in the discussion board post. But after that, we're going through a class of 25 individuals, and at the end of the day, nobody has time to remember whose title is whose. But you're reading their posts, you're understanding what's going on, and then you're just respectfully replying, hoping to get some type of engagement back and forth. Obviously, I've always wanted to make a post and wait to get something back, some feedback, and then obviously reading through everybody else's posts as the best you can throughout your week, and staying engaged. Everybody wants to participate and have some type of input on the information that they're putting out.
I appreciate that very much. So talking through that engagement, as we were just discussing before we went live, we're now in week 3 of the current course, and we have 45 new students in the program. And as is common, several expressed wanted to learn more about work, school, life balance. So like most LEPSL students, sir, you have a demanding and very important and time-sensitive professional role, presumably personal and professional commitments, and you thrive during your time in the LEPSL program. Any tips for kind of work, life, school balance? How did you juggle all those things and were successful on all fronts?
Yeah, my calendar is my best friend. Always kind of having things in place to remind me that hey, an assignment's due, or hey, remember to jump onto Blackboard and put in a couple of posts, or to read a couple of posts. But at the end of the day, going through some of these assignments, when I went to school in 1998. That was when I completed my bachelor's program. And so I had some anxiety going back to school. And during that interim, those 20 years interim, I had heard about online school, and I kind of poo-pooed it at first because I was used to the traditional type of college education. And then once I entered into the program, it's my opinion, obviously, it's the only way to go. We're all busy, travel time going from, just looking for parking. I remember back then, having to look for parking and then trek to your class. Right now, you don't even have to do that. Now you can do it from the comfort of your home, at midnight or whatever your shift is. So, having that convenience obviously is a factor, and then all of these different, online services that are available, such as Grammarly and Perla and all these different, things to make our lives so much easier. You're still doing the work. You still have to type out the information. You still have to do everything that's needed, but just having that technology available is definitely key.
I appreciate that. I'll say LEPSL was my first experience with online education as well. I was in, a traditional brick and mortar undergraduate facing role for roughly my first 15 years at the university. And so I also was a little bit nervous and skeptical, learning a whole different medium. And we're just so fortunate to have this infrastructure that the university has provided, and technology experts and adult learning experts that really help us craft our classes. So I just thought it might be Zoom school, right? But they really have thought, they know the science behind what works, and they really keep the faculty and the curriculum crafted in a way that dovetails with those best practices. So it's really great. And I will tell you, parking is the hardest thing about an academic career, sir. Always is, every campus I've ever been on. So it's nice to get to avoid that on occasion. Kind of as we look towards wrapping up here, Captain, you've had quite a few remarkable months here, if you don't mind me saying so. So if I'm tracking the details correctly, December 2022, you graduated from the LEPSL program. You were voted discussion board MVP for your promotion, for your performance in that class. And keep in mind, we have about 200 students. So being recognized as 1 out of 200 is a pretty significant accomplishment, if you don't mind me saying so. And that same month, you were promoted to captain. Am I tracking all those details correctly, sir?
Yes, it's been a whirlwind of a December. Definitely humbled by being selected as a discussion board MVP. And then we finished school. I believe it was December 12th. That was the last day of class. And then 4 days later, I tested for the position, and then it was announced a couple of days after that. So it was a great Christmas for myself, for my family, and humbled by my chief for giving me the opportunity to serve our department, our community, but also to be selected as like I said, a discussion board MVP. Very humbling experience.
That's fantastic. And can you talk a little bit more about? I know one of the goals of LEPSL is that we're always trying to do our best to teach material, not just for an abstract academic checkbox, but that is applicable and useful. Were there things out of the LEPSL program that assisted or supported you as you went through the promotional process?
Yeah, of course. The whole 21st century policing report, that was a big deal in our promotional process. And obviously everything's opportunity and timing. And the timing of that course for me just fell into place with what we were discussing during the promotional process. And I was aware of the report. I never sat down and read the entire thing, or even thought about reading half of it. But for our project for that course was creating our own report to the community on 21st century policing. And as we're doing that, I'm going through all the different initiatives that our department does, why we do it. And, I was able to come up with some ideas that helped me with my interview, my discussions with our chief and the other executive members of our team. So for anybody out there that's, obviously thinking about, coming into the program and that are watching this, it's definitely a valuable program. It's an investment in yourself, and definitely something that is current, not just something that, was taught 2 years ago and now we're just continually, addressing the same subjects. It's continual, and it's very, very current.
Wow. Captain, really glad to hear that we served you well, and I appreciate the kind words. As we wrap up here, any final thoughts, any things I failed to ask about that you'd like to share with the LE community or LEPSL community out there?
No, I mean, like I said earlier, I was talking to one of my partners, and they're already into week 3 of the spring session or winter spring session, and so I do miss the interaction online with the discussion boards and the routine of turning in a paper every week. So I'm not going to say that I'm not happy that things are off my plate, but I do miss the structure that the program created. So. But no, everything else is great, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. And on behalf of everyone here in LEPSL, you know, we mean it wholeheartedly when we say it's students like yourselves that are just so engaged and above and beyond what the program is asking of them, that really has been the heartbeat and the key to the success of the program. So I find that I often say this to our students, but we're really happy that you graduated, and ultimately that's the goal. And congratulations to you and your family. But you're also going to be missed. You know, it's kind of like losing your starters on a sports team. You got to know what's through the next generation of LEPSL students that are going to fill your shoes. So we really appreciate the legacy that you left with the program, sir. Huge congrats on having a December 2022 to remember. Congrats on the promotion in particular. And I'll kick it back to Sarah here to wrap us out. And thanks again for joining us to discuss this MVP award.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you both so much for your time today. And thank you to all who are watching us live or everyone who's watching the replay. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us, and we'll see you next time.